Hi, I'd like to welcome everyone to another edition of Conversations about Art. I'm J. Allen Constant. I live in New Mexico, and I'm here with Paul Rowland, who lives in Tokyo, Japan. Today, we're talking to Clare Cookman from Bristol, England. Welcome, Clare. Glad to have you with
Hi,
us.
nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, too. First off, we'd like to ask you how you got started in art and any education you've had in art.
Well, a long time ago, probably about 30 years ago, I did a foundation in art at Banbury Art College. And then I went to Surrey Institute of Art and Design to do a fine art degree. I probably lasted about 2 years, maybe a year and a half, but my mental health just got the better of me, and I just couldn't cope with it anymore. I think in hindsight, I just didn't like being told what to do too much, or I kept getting told that I was reinventing the wheel, or I couldn't reinvent the wheel. But I had very firm ideas about you know what my focus was, and I couldn't really change my mind. So, and then I think, yeah, just depression got the better of me, and I couldn't cope with the workload and being away from home, so I left. And then I've had three children. They're kind of grown up. The youngest is 13. And I guess I just haven't had the headspace in all that time. I've constantly looked at artists and been, seething with jealousy of like, oh, I just want to be able to do that. I did quite a bit of design work for my dad and his business. And then I started doing some digital collages in Photoshop. And I really enjoyed doing that, but it was never, it was never the same as getting paints out and, all of that. But I guess money, time, it's a big deal to kind of start. And then in lockdown, we had we'd used this bit of wood for our dining room table to make it bigger, and it was just there, and I just had this desire to paint on it. And so I got all my son's paints because he'd gone through a stage of painting. So I got out all his paints, anything I could find. And I watched a couple of course videos just where they kind of said, just do this, do that, be free. And I just loved it. And I created this painting, this ginormous painting on this bit of wood. And that was, it took a long time, but it was like, oh, I can actually do this. And actually, that's quite good. And ever since then, I just haven't stopped really.
So you consider yourself a mixed media artist?
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. There's not one painting I've done or artwork I've done where it's just one thing. It's probably a list of 20 things that I use. So, yeah.
So paint and collage, ink,
Yeah.
pencil.
Oh, yeah, everything. Wax, a lot of wax, plaster, chalk, pastels, paint, anything I could find really. Rust, spray paints, anything.
So let's take a look at some of your work right now.
The first thing that strikes me about this is the color, which I just find incredible. Um, I'm attracted by the color and then the texture, and then I noticed this interesting grid pattern, which I've noticed in several of your works. Can you just talk us through maybe the creation of this piece a little
Yeah.
bit? I'd love to know how you made it.
Yeah, well, it's called Barcelona. And so the basic inspiration was Barcelona, obviously. And when I was there, I was just obsessed with all the graffiti and the doorways. And living in Bristol, there's obviously a lot of graffiti, but I found the graffiti and the peeling walls in Barcelona so much more romantic. And I took a photo of this particular door and this color. Oh, I'm actually much more of a black and white person, but this color is literally my favorite color. And I just, I did a digital collage from all of my photos from Barcelona, but I just was like, I want to create the actual door that I saw. I want it to feel exactly like that. Whereas I want to go and touch it, and I can't stop looking at it. So I didn't actually know if I would be able to achieve it. It felt quite unmanageable, but I don't know. It just sort of came together, and I managed to get the exact color I wanted by just playing around with mixing colors, and it just appeared, the color. And then I used, there's probably, I don't know how many layers. It is incredibly thick with layers. There is plaster, there is a lot of glue. I've used like a lot of old book pages.
Oh yeah.
And also within it, there is some of my actual photography. So I've printed some bits out, and then I've ripped them and I've put them back into the collage. And I usually, with a collage, everything I rip off it, I usually put back in, because then it's more authentic, I think, because the journey is more visible, because a piece that I might ripped off in the second layer will go back in maybe on the fifth layer at somewhere.
Wow.
But grids are, definitely something which always crops up, because it's the way that the lines they kind of make little sections in themselves. So where each box is, or where each, like, I don't know, it's like, it's creating sections within a whole piece in a sense. So you could crop about 20-30 sections of this, and it would actually make a nice piece on its own.
Just before we go on to the next one, I want to quickly ask you about the texts, which I'm really intrigued by. Where are they? Where did you get them from? What are they?
What, the text as in the book pages, or?
Yeah. Is it just random?
It mostly is random, I'll be honest. I do check the words, that they aren't highly irrelevant or, dodgy. But for me, words in themselves, it's not so much important. It's the actual visual aspect of them. So some of the words will be horizontal, some will be vertical. So they're not hugely significant in my work, I'll be totally honest.
On this next piece, Claire, I see the name is City Walk, and I certainly see that it looks like you're taking a walk around the city. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, and funnily enough, the other one of these, called Country Walk, actually sold at a gallery last week, and I was really hoping that somebody would buy them together. But very much Bristol is obviously a very, amazing, big city, bustling city, but we have so many parks. I literally live, I can see the park from my window. I can see the train station as well, but we just have green spaces everywhere. So you could go for a walk. Sometimes it's not particularly picturesque, but there's always something to see. And I prefer trees in the winter. I know that sounds a bit weird, but I love the black lines and the shadows and everything. So this is very much a kind of walk that I like, where there's lots of trees to photograph, but then there's also the peeling walls, and then there's a couple of pubs maybe. So it's just that kind of a whole day in one kind of very small collage. And just the same kind of thing, really. You can see the grids, you can see, I think you can see what I'm inspired by, in my collage. And just the same techniques really with the other ones, like so many layers. There's sort of, you can see almost this deep into it.
And how large is this piece?
I think it's 26 by 26 centimeters. So it's quite small, but it's not, it's very powerful for a small collage. It's got a lot in it. And my partner actually made a handmade frame for it to sit in, so I think that works really well with it as well.
This one does seem a little bit different to some of your other pieces that seem more defined. They've got pieces which are very clearly torn out from somewhere and stuck on. You can see the edges, but there's a different feel, a different technique. about this one. Can you tell us how you made this one, please?
I got some canvas and I just felt like I wanted to do something slightly different, less collagey, but still, there's a lot of texture in it still, but it's much more subtle. There's layers and layers and layers, which maybe you can't see on the screen, but where a tiny bit of red pencil has come through, or a little bit of wax. There's a lot of gold wax and a lot of gold leaf, and there's just layers and layers of white paint. And then I mean, I guess it's similar in the fact that I'm still focusing on line and form, but it's definitely a lot less kind of complex, I guess. I mean, I find it hard sometimes because I do love to challenge myself and do something that I'm not, I might think, oh, I'm not particularly good at doing something like this. I mean, I'm definitely going to kind of do more like this just to see if I can. And I think that there's still a lot of expression in it, even though it's a lot more, I guess, simple than the other ones. I mean, this piece has gone through layers and layers of ink and so much stuff. You don't just get to this by chance, in a sense. It's got to have 20-30 layers on it before you can start stripping it back to go, oh yeah, I want that bit to stay there. A great thing that I use is wax, cold wax. And if you because often there's a bit that I like right at the beginning, and I will put a whole layer of wax on it, and so that eventually that will be able to come back out again, because obviously you can scrape over the wax, and it kind of protects the layers that you want to, still be there at the end. Oh, look, there's Country Walk, the one that sold.
There's City Walk and Country Walk. Did you start with the titles and then did you build from there, or did you start working on them and all of a sudden the titles occurred to you?
Titles are a tricky one for me. I actually don't necessarily think that artwork needs titles, if I'm honest. For me, I want people to think, what does that mean to me, or what do I feel when I look at it? And I mean, I spoke to an artist the other day who was fascinating, and he said that he would name his pieces literally tree with grids or browns and blacks. And I was like, oh yeah, that makes more sense, because it's actually explaining what the piece is about. But sometimes for these two pieces, I really did think the City Walk and Country Walk really fitted, because this one is a lot more earthy tones and a lot more simple and a lot more wholesome, I guess. And then the City Walk obviously had more color and more, I don't know, grunginess to it. So yeah, I thought the titles fitted, but I've got to say I'm not a planner. Definitely not a planner. So yeah, it could be weeks into it before I decide it's going to be this color. It's probably pink underneath or something, or I don't know. But then I think that's part of the journey of it.
In this piece, I noticed music notation down the lower left. I don't recall that in City Walk. Do you associate music with the country?
Yeah, definitely. I just wanted to incorporate that in it, really. A bit like the words, it's more of a visual element. I mean, if when I look at that, I see almost like, landscape of notes, like, or a tree, lots of trees or some houses. So yeah, I use it as a kind of, another visual aid, I guess.
And in City Walk, Paul noticed that you use a grid. How are you making the grids? Are you cutting into the layers, or are you using pen or ink to create the grids?
Yeah, pen mostly, and I will literally just like ruler. There's no, I just feel where the lines need to be, I guess. There's no structure in a way, and the lines will probably come and go throughout, and then it's only sort of at the end that I'm like, yeah, happy with those lines. I sometimes use a knife. I sometimes use scissors to like literally like scratch into it. Sometimes use my nails, which is why I haven't got any. Just anything I can find, really. A pen, a pencil, sharp pencil. And I don't like them to be too straight. Sometimes I use a ruler, sometimes I don't. But yeah, it depends on the piece, really.
This is quite different from what we've seen so far, almost as if it's by a different artist. What's happening here?
It's very different. And oh, I think sometimes with me, it's a bit like my whole kind of personality, I guess, or state of mind. ADHD is very, very hard. It's all or nothing. So you have days of up really high, really like loving life, and then you can have days where you're literally just bedbound, you can't do anything. The thought of going outside is horrendous. And I just I don't know. I do love color, but I think I'm quite scared of it, I suppose. And so I have done 2 or 3, which I think we will see. I think I sent them to you, where I just really wanted to show the energy through color, not just necessarily through the lines and the textures. Having said that, this piece is still really, really layered and very thick. And there is still, I mean, you can see the lines going back layers and layers and layers. And so it's not namby-pamby. It's not like just let's do a quick watercolor painting. It's still really, really thick in layers. And again, I might have sent you the picture of the print because it's high res and really good quality. The original is on a canvas board and it's very textured. And I actually had these in my last exhibition, and people did say they were different, but they could still see the connection that they were mine. It's difficult. Sometimes I think, oh God, you should stick to one style and you should really try and just keep, on the same path. But then I don't know, it's like it's who I am. So
This piece is called Faithless, and it looks very similar to the last piece, Exposure.
yeah,
Are they
they're
related?
definitely a pair. They're definitely a pair. Yeah. And I don't know, this one's my favorite, I think, but then when I put them together, I'm not sure. They definitely didn't look like this to begin with. They definitely have got some layers on them, a lot of layers. But I think that for me, you have to, I always go through what I call the ugly phase, where you don't care what it looks like, literally have to not care. Like you wouldn't show it to anyone because it would be embarrassing. It would be like, well, this is not what it's going to look like, believe me. But you kind of, for me, that ugly phase is really, really important, because then this appears at the end of it when I've gone through that stage. And I go through so weeks and weeks where it's just, I can't even look at it because it's awful. And I'm like, oh, just throw it in the bin, whatever. But then I'll come back to it sometimes weeks later, months later, and I just suddenly have direction. I'm like, right, yeah, there we go. So yeah, these two look really good together. Really good together.
Is this a work on paper?
No, it's on canvas board.
Hmm.
And I'm not sure how big I would reckon it's probably probably between A4 and A3, probably more A3. Yeah, this one is like, you probably imagine it's the partner of the other one that you know.
Was this inspired by something you saw, or
Oh,
did it just
always.
emerge as
Yeah.
you, yeah?
I'm obsessed with rust. I know that sounds very weird, but like, I mean, you should see my camera roll. I have pictures of rust and pictures of like walls peeling, and just, yeah, sometimes I've taken a picture and I'm like, that is a picture that could be framed on my wall. I love it that much. And I guess, yeah, that is, I guess, what my main inspiration is. But again, I'm somebody said to me the other day, and it made perfect sense, that if you're an abstract artist and you are creating abstract work, that you have to use abstract language. I was like, okay, because I was saying that, my inspirations are like cracks in the pavement, or, the way that lines interact with other lines and meet other lines. And then you get a curve sometimes, or, where somebody's painted or splashed some paint on a paving slab that creeps out of the paving slab. And so I guess that is my inspiration for these pieces. But if I wanted to use abstract language, it would be, yeah, about form and shape and line and, that kind of thing. But surfaces as well. So I try and get as many different surfaces in there that create texture, to try and make it as authentic as possible.
What is the role of photography in your art?
Well, I love photography, but I leave that to the photographers. I don't have a camera. I have my iPhone. That's it. But for me, I'm not, again, not, I mean, some collages that people do are insane. But for me, I don't like using anything in my collages that isn't mine. So yes, I do collect, book pages, and yes, I do peel bits off the wall in Bristol and things like that. But if I'm going to use a photograph of a tree in my work, it's got to be my photograph. Otherwise, I feel like it's not truly mine. And so that is really probably the only connection with photography for me, is that I take a lot of photos so that I can print it out and use it in my work.
This piece is called Ode to City Living. Where does that title come from? And tell us more about the piece.
Right. Well, this is probably one of my favorite pieces. It's actually behind me. Look there. It's a very large piece. It's on a wooden board, so it's quite heavy, and it is caked in layers. But for me, this, again with the trees, those 3 trees at the top were there from the very, very beginning, and I wanted to actually try my hand at doing something a little bit more realistic, and it was not going to work. It just wasn't for me. It was like there were stages when it was okay, and it was like, oh, this does look like the park and it looks great, but it just was boring and it just wasn't me. And I was like, right, no. But like I said, with the wax, I kept the wax on those trees, and I literally covered them up and kept revealing them at every single stage. And I kind of did know quite at the beginning that I wanted them to stay there, that they were really important. But the rest of it is based on, city living with high-rise tower blocks and graffiti, and I have literally got outside my window the train tracks and the high-rise buildings, and then trees, and it's all going on. I've got everything. I've got cranes. I've got and it's an ode to city living. It's exactly the kind of city that I live in. You've got trees and you've got concrete and everything, but again with color. And in this piece, I've used all of the paper is all of the paper that I've peeled off the walls in Bristol. So they'll probably come and arrest me now, but it was peeling off anyway.
So this one is not a square, and quite a different shape, which creates a different feeling to the other ones. Why did you choose this format?
I'll be honest. So again, bits of wood. We had an absolutely ginormous piece of wood at home, and I can't remember what it was for. And it was, I started creating a collage on it, and it literally took, well, it's probably taken a year, still not finished, because it's that big. I mean, it's kind of floor to ceiling. This is actually the end bit of that chopped off. So it was sort of that way. And then I turned it around. I was like, oh, this looks good. And it gave it just gave it another dimension, the fact that I just turned it round, because there was already some work on it, but I turned it round. I mean, there's just bits of tape stuck on, but I think I love the way that it's quite structured in the middle, and then it gets less structured as you go from and I guess that's what I love about it. And it is organized chaos, because that's like my mind.
This piece is called Silence is Golden. So tell us about this piece.
Right. Well, this piece really did go on a journey. I mean, it started off, I can't even remember how it started off, but it has been on a journey. It has probably a whole tub of plaster on this one. And where these little images are poking through, they are quite deep back in the artwork. They're like little, they're I mean, I don't know, 5 mil back in the artwork. And so I literally only allowed a few little bits to come through. So you've just got like whispers of pink and like gold. And I mean, I covered up the gold about 10 times and brought it back out and covered it back up again, because sometimes it was too much, sometimes it wasn't enough. And then, and then I painted it in a white paint that I didn't like. It was too creamy, but then pure white was too white. So it did take a lot for it to kind of And I'm going to have to say that my mum named this piece for me, and because she's very proud of the fact that she named this piece for me. But I did a poll, and I got a few people on Instagram to kind of say what, you know, they felt it meant to them, or what, you know. And Silence is Golden was just perfect, because it literally is like, you know, little bits of whispers of color coming through, but only little bits. And yeah, I just absolutely love it. And I think this one is sold, and I think it's going to Spain. But we haven't organized it yet. But I will be sad to let this one go, because it is my favorite one. It's a really thick board, and it's quite big, so it's very like impactful.
It sounds like it might be very heavy too.
Yeah, really heavy. It's, yeah, a bit of a problem, really. Again, I just found a bit of board and decided to paint on it, and didn't really think about the consequences of that. But yeah, it's quite heavy.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And this is my next favorite one.
Okay, please tell me why it's your next favorite.
I just love it. This one, and so the last three, I think, are my favorite. They're probably more genuinely me. This one, again, I tried to do something very different, and I think I was thinking too much about what I should be producing and what maybe would look nice. And then I created this piece, which was just, no, I was just like, no, this is not me. So there's probably tiny bits of that coming through, but I used a lot of rust on this one. I've got this rust paint that you get, and then you kind of put another solution over the top. So you've got kind of that coming through, but then there's also so much texture. And the reason it's called Striptease is because basically all of the bits are strips of paper, which I've ripped off the artwork and put back on. So from the left to the right, that was where all those pieces came from, because I layered it up so much and pulled them off. And when I pulled the tape off, the back of the tape was just so amazing and beautiful. I had to turn it over and put it back in the artwork. So all of those pieces on the right are all ripped off bits of tape from the other side. And yeah, there's the top dark bits are very, again, really deep back in the canvas, so that it's very and actually this is canvas. And again, I was a bit scared of canvas, because I actually did buy this canvas specifically to do a new piece. And so I was like really precious with it to begin with, because it cost a lot of money to buy the canvas. And then I thought, oh, you've got to be really careful with canvas. And I can't but actually once you build up the layers of plaster, you can still really scrape into it and dig into it. So yeah, and I just love pink. That's sort of my color, really. If I'm being happy, is there.
Why do you say that these three pieces are you? What is your style?
I feel like these three are more, I think if I had an exhibition, I've probably got those three pieces would look amazing together. And I think that sometimes I've got work, like maybe the other colourful ones, that should be in a different exhibition. Maybe sometimes I think, you know, you've got to choose your audience and choose your, you know, dependent on size, or I don't know. I just think that big and bold and things is probably my style, but then I always want to go and try and do something else. I feel like maybe, oh, I don't know, this is going to sound stupid, but I feel like these aren't valid enough. I feel like I need to do something a bit more special, or a bit better, or a bit, I don't know. But then I like these, so maybe I need to just say to myself, I like this is my favorite, stick with this. But you know, I guess there are a couple of people that I kind of admire on Instagram, and they're very, like, their work is all identical, and it's all black, and it's all, and I think, oh, I love that. I love that. And I get, you know, but then I need to just, yeah, stick to what I know.
I really liked lots of the small cards and pieces you made that you posted on Instagram that we haven't seen here. And how did those little cards come about?
Well, the handmade cards, I wanted to call them like mini artworks, because I started making them, and I thought handmade cards sounds a bit craft markety. And actually, in their own right, they were really cute, really worked really well. And I thought, you know, these are actually mini artworks. They are, you know, they are similar to my large pieces, but they're like this big. And I think, again, I think, yeah, okay, there is cards, and you know, they've been quite popular, and I don't sell them very cheap. But actually, thinking about it, if they were all in a frame in an exhibition on a wall, they would look amazing together. And that's the thing that I've got to try and think about is, you know, don't just make them into cards. Actually, I could do mini collages like that. And actually, I guess, you know, it's difficult with some exhibitions because the hanging system means that you can't actually hang small things because they swing about on the wall. At home, you can literally put a nail in and stick a painting on. It looks amazing. But in galleries, it's really difficult. They're really restrictive. So if I had framed those and, you know, put them in little box frames or something, they would have just looked stupid. So you know, that's something I definitely want to think about is, yeah. And I also like the fact that somebody may not have very much money, but they still want to buy a piece of artwork. And that's, you know, that, and those little, I don't know if you saw the little heart canvases that I did, and they're something that I love doing. I mean, I did 25 all at once, and just, I had so much fun because I literally was just scraping and spray paint and just, you know, and I just wanted to make something that was accessible to people, and, you know, that somebody could have a little piece of artwork on their mantelpiece, or, you know, that hadn't cost them a fortune.
I admire you for that. My last question is something that maybe should have been my first question. What is the role of the accident in your work? I'm looking at the splatter of pink paint right in the center of this one, which I presume you didn't intentionally throw there, or maybe you did. And you've talked about all the layers, but it also sounds really intentional. Like, how does that work for you? How do you feel about accidents and chance in your work?
I'd say that's 90%. I'll be totally honest. I mean, I'm not, and this is going to make you laugh. Well, I hope it will make you laugh. I constantly say that I'm not very good. That's just what I'm like. And I am constantly saying, oh, it's just an accident. I don't know how I did it. This one was a fluke. I mean, look at it. It's brilliant. It's just a fluke. And my 13-year-old son thinks it's the most hilarious thing he's ever heard. And he takes the piss out of me so much. He said, oh, yeah, mum just picked up a paintbrush and just landed on the canvas. She just fell on it and it just looked like that. Because and I just think, but actually I do think that sometimes, that I literally, wow, that's good. I don't know how did that happen? And then I have to remind myself that I did actually do it. Like, my hand did do it. But I think because the intention maybe wasn't there to begin with. I didn't visualize this at all to begin with. Therefore, in my head, it's just a fluke and an accident. And as each piece, as I do each piece, I still haven't got to a point where I've gone, Claire, this is no fluke now. You are really good at this. Each piece is literally just another accident that I've done. Oh, actually, I ripped a bit of paper off, and look how good that bit of paper looked on the other side. So I stuck it on and it looks great. So let's rip a bit more off. And, well, that obviously was an accident. But I do know that ripping bits of tape off paint does look good. I do know that. But I didn't. And I guess I do stick them down intentionally to think that at some point I'm going to rip them off. But I still think that a lot of accidents do happen and then they actually look good.
Unfortunately, we have to bring this conversation to a close, but thank you so much, Claire. I appreciate your honesty, and it was fascinating to hear about your creative process. So thank you so much.
No, thank you. Thank you, guys. It was really good.